Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely demystify English sentence construction today. And we're doing it by breaking everything down into completely intuitive, really digestible building blocks. Honestly, whether you're just starting out or you're already brushing up on advanced mechanics, our goal is to make this absolutely crystal clear for all stages of learning. Let's get right into it. To make sure we've got the absolute most reliable foundation possible, we're pulling our frameworks straight from the Collins Cobuild Intermediate English Grammar and Practice. And what makes this source so incredibly powerful is that it's actually backed by the Collins corpus. If you don't know, that's literally the world's largest language database. So we're not just looking at dusty textbook theory here. We're looking at real, applied, everyday English. All right, so we're going to be treating English like a giant set of Lego bricks today. Here's our roadmap. First, the sentence building blocks, then mastering nouns and verbs. After that, the art of asking. Then we'll get into question tags and nuance, and finally wrap up with some quirky English verb rules. Starting off with Section 1, the sentence building blocks. We literally have to start with the foundational base plate of our whole architecture here, which is the simple sentence. Now, a simple clause is just brilliantly straightforward. A simple sentence has exactly one clause. That means it simply identifies who or what we're talking about, the subject, and then it pairs it directly with a verb group that tells us the action or the situation they're in. That right there, that is the structural core of absolutely every single statement you make. Let's actually see how this builds in practice. Step 1, we just snap on a subject. Let's use he. Step 2, we add a verb, like opened. And step 3, we attach our object, the car door. So we've combined a subject, a verb, and an object, which, by the way, is just the person or thing directly affected by that action. Subject, verb, object. It's a wonderfully efficient piece of engineering, isn't it? But what happens when we want to get a little more sophisticated? Well, this quote brilliantly illustrates a complex sentence. We take our main clause, no one said anything, and we literally stack a subordinate clause right on top of it, using words like when. So, when he stopped. It gives us that vital extra context about the main action, and it just snaps perfectly onto our base plate. Moving right along to Section 2, mastering nouns and verbs. Now we're going to zoom in on the specific little bricks that actually populate those clauses we just built. Okay, so noun groups can snap together to create some highly precise meanings, but they always follow a strict architectural order before you even get to the noun itself. Check this out. You start with a determiner, like the, then a number, 3, then an adjective, like tall, before you finally hit your noun, men, the 3 tall men. Try mixing up that order, like tall 3 the men, and the whole structure instantly feels incredibly unstable, right? Meanwhile, we have our action words. Regular verbs shift into 4 distinct forms depending on the time of the action and the subject performing it. So you've got your base form, ask, the third person, asks, the continuous, asking, and of course the past tense, asked. It is a super predictable, totally reliable system. Well, mostly reliable. You definitely have to keep an eye out for irregular verbs that completely break the mold. Take the verb be, for example. It actually has 8 entirely different forms you have to master. Am, is, are, was, were, being, been, and be. Crazy, right? It's easily the most shape-shifting brick in our entire set, adapting to pretty much any grammatical situation you throw at it. Which brings us to Section 3, the art of asking. Because look, building statements is great and all, but what actually happens when we need to start asking for information? Let's look at the architecture of a question. Have you ever actually noticed that you completely change the word order without even thinking about it? Look at this statement. He speaks English very well. To turn this into a yes or no question, we don't just tack on a question mark at the end. No, we bring an auxiliary verb like do or does all the way to the very front. Does he speak English very well? That auxiliary verb just jumps right ahead of the subject. But what if we need way more than just a simple yes or no? That is exactly when we deploy these W words at the start of our sentences to extract specific data. Who targets people, where targets places, when targets times. Honestly, they're basically like targeted grammatical search queries. And this example right here brilliantly illustrates just how flexible these words can be. You can even use words like whose completely by themselves as the subject or the object of a sentence to ask about possession. Whose did you prefer, hers or mine? You don't even need to repeat the noun you're talking about. It makes your sentence perfectly streamlined. English is full of surprises, isn't it? Notice what I did there? You've probably heard people tack little mini questions onto the absolute ends of their sentences, just like I did, haven't you? That perfectly tees up Section 4, question tags and nuance. Those little additions at the end, those are called question tags, and they are a genuinely fascinating architectural flourish we use in conversational English to show a reaction, seek agreement, or just politely request things. You really have to notice the polarity here. It's almost like a grammatical magnet. If the main statement is positive, like, David's school is quite nice, the tag attached to it is usually negative, isn't it? And it works vice versa, too. It creates this really cool linguistic balance that subtly, almost subconsciously, invites the listener to agree with you. But of course, English loves to break its own rules. You can actually use a positive tag with a positive statement. Why on earth would we do that? Well, to express surprise, doubt, or even downright anger. You fell on your back, did you? See how that completely changes the tone? We go from simply seeking agreement to showing a really strong emotional reaction. It's such a wonderful tool for nuance. And finally, Section 5, Quirky English Verb Rules. Let's take a look at some of the really unique trick pieces in our Lego set, starting with something called ergative verbs. Now, I know ergative verbs sounds highly technical, but they are actually a hilarious bit of English where inanimate objects suddenly seem to just take action entirely on their own. They're basically verbs that can take an object, but can also just drop the object entirely and make the thing being acted upon the brand new subject. Take a close look at the transition happening here. In the transitive version, I opened the door. I am the subject acting on the door. But notice how the door, which was the object being acted upon a second ago, suddenly moves to the very front and becomes the subject in the intransitive version. The door opened. It's literally as if the door just magically opened itself. And the truly quirky part about this is that some verbs are only ergative with highly specific nouns, like you can catch your dress on a fence or your tights can catch on a nail. The clothes suddenly seem to have a mind of their own. You see this with alarms too, actually. A person can sound an alarm, or the alarm can simply sound in the night. Oh, and we can't forget true reflexive verbs like busy and content. Unlike most other verbs, these strictly require a reflexive pronoun, like himself or myself, as the direct object. You can't just busy a room, you have to busy yourself. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a built-in feedback loop in the sentence structure itself. So bringing this all together, while English is beautifully structured and incredibly logical at its core, it absolutely still has these quirky, invisible boundaries. Think about this. You can say he fired a gun and the gun fired. But while you can say he fired a bullet, you can never say the bullet fired. It just sounds wrong. English is wonderfully systematized, for sure, but these strange little limitations prove there's always a deeper layer to explore, don't they? Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and keep building your knowledge, one block at a time.